Hello everyone, my name is Annemarie Ni Churrea In. I'm a poet and writer and I'm really delighted to be part of the Edgeworth Literary Festival 2021. The festival is a wonderful opportunity to honour the rich legacy of Maria Edgeworth, who is remembered not only for her novels and her children's literature, but also for her writing and very progressive views in the fields of politics, education, and women's rights. So I'm going to begin with a selection of poems from my debut collection, Bloodroot, which was published by Dura Press in 2017. It's a book with several poems on the subject of family separation and some poems on the subject of the Irish mother and baby homes. Indeed, this first poem that I'm going to read reimagines the experience of my paternal grandmother, who in 1951 gave birth in a home and was forced to relinquish her child to adoption. Penance for a Girl in Trouble, 1951. Shame. Use this word when you speak of love. A man of cloth will come. Your new home is among brides. Deny the child inside you is the child you dream at night. And when they cut short your hair, watch the cuts fall like the soft fur of an animal held still by threat. Find a pale rose climbing a wall and consider yourself smaller now than even a thorn. In your starched uniform, step into a nameless stream. Feel the coldness between your thighs. Say aloud, in this life, I am drowning. I'm very interested in Gaelic place names, and I grew up in a place called Dura in Donegal, which means the woods of Connor. And in Irish mythology, Connor was conceived by a bird, leaving him in effect fatherless. And so this next poem is dedicated to the paternal grandfather that I never knew. In many ways, I think a family absence can also be a strong presence in one's life. Dura Hunara, for a grandfather unknown. To you, I owe my thirst, for a name gets passed down through the spear side in underland streams that pulse with clear meaning and thrive towards the lips. A name is how we match our tongue to the source and taste our own sediment. To you, I owe my whole obsession with the sky above the bog, the blues overspreading sods stacked up in neat triangles towards the sun. To you, I owe my hunger, for metaphor is a failed attempt to speak in common terms, and I was raised on the hill of King Connor, who conceived by a bird braved the air in fluent wing. I'd also like to read you some work from my collection forthcoming from the Gallery Press at the end of this year. I live in Dublin 8 and I'm located very close to the site of St. James's Hospital. In the 1700s, the city workhouse stood on this site, and that workhouse later evolved into the Dublin Foundling Hospital. Astonishingly, by the time the Foundling Hospital closed its doors in 1829, it said that over 200,000 infants and children had passed through. And so this is a 10 part poem. I'm only going to read you 2 sections, but if you'd like to read the full work, it's available on solsticecentre.ie to read in full. The Foundling Crib, Part 1. By lamplight, an aged map of Dublin reveals the city as preached by Swift. Scant lanes and alleys that run like ghost veins, pulsing the blood of women who once begged for bread and alms, who cupped their palms to strangers in cutthroat place, in murdering lane. I look down along the black steps of 3 centuries or more. I can hear the throb of water rising out of ling and heather bogs. Source is another word for church. In Rome, the poorest mothers left infants by the Tiber, and later, among the nets, the fishermen found the tangled bones. Did they lay these bones out as treasure? Did they toss them back into water? Every river knows the weight of hunger. Anna Liffey, give us back our bodies. The stories of all our mothers are written on the inner walls of this city I call home. Part 5. 100 miles Bridget Kearney crossed on foot to place her newborn girl into the foundling crib. Hewn of stone and neatly chiselled, the bell was rung and sun or moon, the wheel revolved, no questions asked. Hush, little bog child, through this blind portal did Bridget look. As the wheel turned, did her hands tremble? Only the gulls can know the secrets of the dead. Out of every parish and across the Irish Sea, the women came. On the other side, the record states what the porter found looped to infant wrists and toes, talismanic medals, prayers, names, and dates of birth. Now, where no mother stands, I stand in the milky scent of a butterfly bush that springs like a bruise out of the earth, winters and winters after the wound, an intercession. I am not her, I am mother. She is not forgotten. She is my daughter. So, staying on the theme of Dublin 8, I spend a lot of time at the Irish National War Memorial Gardens, which is a location of real beauty, and it's a pleasure to spend time by the river there. And yet, I've often been compelled to think about the nature of war, of violence, and of what aspects of war we choose to commemorate. And so this next poem in 2 parts is titled Boy Soldiers. 1. Let us remember John, son of Catherine, who at 14 years old weighed 8 stone and a half. The boy from Wheelbarrow Lane, the boy who ran the streets of Waterford, putting it all up to the gods, a hurley stick against the sun. He was killed in World War I by the burn of enemy gas rising cloud-like into his eyes, through his father's eyes and his father's father's eyes. In our deepest gardens, we have built an amphitheatre. With our grief, we have wounded ourselves into the earth, and each year we kneel to inhale the roses. In his honor, the stone inscription reads, with all things undying, we have found safety. 2. Let us forget the unnamed son, of the unnamed mother, who was found slumped over a leaf of foil. One touch and he knew she was gone. He was raised by his uncles to become a lookout boy on the outer edge of Dublin city, where once the Cambro-Norman knights rode on horses. He rode his bicycle in the rain. At the age of 18, he was led through the 4th province of the Rosarium, and among the petals he was shot 3 times in the skull. They turned the lining of his pockets inside out and left him for dead. In court it was said he was a cog in the wheel. The newspapers ran the headline, he had been warned. So I'm going to read a poem which was written for my goddaughter, Ruby. At the age of 6, I was tucking her into bed one night, and she asked me, what do I believe in spiritually? What is going to keep me safe from harm? And the poem is a response to those questions, and it references the old alphabet, sometimes known as the tree alphabet. Family law. In our 6th summer, you bring me the news that we come from a broken rib. Now you believe we are in danger. Now you believe we must atone for the sins of our fathers. But daughter, we come from the spryest woods. You and I are of the roots that uphold an alphabet to the sun. Your name begins in Roosh, mine in Alm. When we speak, leaves fall from our tongues. Birds nest in the smallest of our words. For this wildness we need not apologize. What grows underfoot is not a worry, it is a right. By chieftain law, no harm can be done to us. This law our elders knew by heart, for even the milk in a cup was owed to it, long before the houses of worship were raised. By men, our trees stood tall. So I'd like to thank everyone at the Mariah Edgeworth Literary Festival for making this celebration happen. I'd also like to thank all of the festival sponsors, including Poetry Ireland, Creative Ireland, RTE, the Irish Research Council, and most importantly, I'd like to thank you for listening. It feels apt that I might end with a few lines from Mariah, who wrote this most gorgeous passage in her last letter to her sister, Aurora Beaufort. In her last letter, she wrote, Ireland, with all thy faults, thy follies too, I love thee still. Still with a candid eye must view thy wit too quick, still blundering into sense thy reckless humour, sad improvidence, and even what sober judges follies call, I, looking at the heart, forget them all. Thank you very much for listening.